tea and coffee warehouse when completed back in 1912. Now this unbelievably huge and just ginormous building here to your right is called the Merchandise Mart. Completed back in 1931, at that time this was the world's largest building, having more than 4.25 billion square feet of space within its walls. So massive in fact that up until 7 or 8 years ago, the building had its own zip code that is now being shared throughout the area. Notice the 8 bronze busts running along the river here, they represent some of the Prince merchants of the United States, including Philemon, Woolworth, Wanamaker, Marshall Field, and a few more. The building was commissioned for and by the president of the Marshall Field Corporation. It was intended to be their wholesale warehouse and distribution center. Their plans did not materialize. 1931, the country was at the height of the Great Depression. They sold the building in 1945 for about half its value to Joseph Kennedy, father of President John Kennedy. The Kennedys also used to own this next building here to our right called the Apparel Mart. They sold both buildings back in 1998 for about $600 million. However, they did retain ownership of the land here to our right, jutting out to the river, called Wolf Point. And this is where the 3 branches of the river come together. Main branch we just came down, south branch there to our left with the Ellis crossing the Lake Street Bridge. We'll go down there eventually. North branch to our right, we're about to make our turn down right now. Now, Wolf Point, as you can see right now, has become a construction site. And that is because 2 years ago, a major planned development was approved to be built here to our right at Wolf Point. That planned development includes the construction of 3 high-rises. That's what they're working on right now. The underground parking garage, which is going to serve all 3 buildings, and the foundation for the first high-rise, the shortest of the 3, which is a roughly 50-story tall rental tower along the north branch of the river. It's only going to be like 500 feet tall. Dead center here to our right at the peak, a roughly 90-story tall mixed-use building, about 950 feet tall. Hopefully they go taller. This site is much too much visually important for any architectural vertical mediocrity. On the east side of the site, here's the Mart, a roughly 75-story tall mixed-use building, about 750 feet tall. Now again, right now they're working on the foundations or the caissons for the first building, the shortest one. The caissons, you drill giant holes deep into the earth, put metal liners down those holes to keep them open, steel reinforcing rebar cages go down those holes that act like bone, and then you fill the hole up with concrete. Think of giant stilts below the earth to help hold up the very tall buildings. The caissons for the first high-rise went down minus 80 feet. They just recently brought in the base of the tower crane, and you see that red base right over there in the pit. Now, of course, those who live in the high-rise directly here to our left weren't all that happy about the development here to our right at Wolf Point, as many will be losing their views. Fortunately, however, no one owns their views, says me and the judge. As you can see, construction has begun. But it was no big secret because there had been plans for buildings on that site for the last 50 years, so it was going to happen eventually. The brick building here to our left is Fulton House, built in 2 different phases. First phase in 1898, we had the arches along the base. Second phase in 1908. You can see when phases come together because of that vertical crack. It was originally the North American Cold Storage Building, a giant icebox that had very few windows. It was renovated 35 years ago by architect Harry Weeks, who in his youth was an avid sailor. So in many of his original designs, you will notice some nautical themes, like here to your left in the river cottages from 1988. The round windows may remind you of portholes on a ship. The triangular shape may remind you of a bow of a ship. Going beneath Kinsey, I just want to point out the wooden posts here to our right around the bridge. These are called pilings. When the pilings are clustered like that, they're called dolphins. They help protect the mechanics and the structure of these bridges from boats slamming into them and throwing the bridge out of whack. Back in 1992, they had to replace some of the pilings around that bridge because of age and rot. And what happened was they accidentally drove one of those pilings just a wee bit too far into the river, puncturing the roof of an old freight tunnel that goes under the corner of that bridge. Downtown Chicago, the Loop, have an elaborate system of old freight tunnels, a century-old, 40 feet down, that we used to bring coal and mail in and out of the old buildings, getting rid of garbage and whatnot. They were abandoned back in the 50s, but they still exist. Back in 92, while replacing a piling, they punctured the roof of a tunnel. It, of course, gave way, causing millions of gallons of river water to rush and flood into those tunnels, flooding practically every basement down in the Loop. That incident shut down the center of the city for about a week, cost more than $1 billion to clean up, and many of those basements weren't dry for about a month. Marshall Fields on State Street, I refuse to call it Macy's, Marshall Fields had fish swing in the basement. As we make this turnaround, we have this 46-story tall apartment building here to our right, Kingsbury Plaza by Solomon Cordwell Benz. And as we make this turn, you can see how thin and narrow the high-rise is. Now the city have been trying to encourage developers of residential buildings to build them taller and thinner for a few reasons. One, it allows for more landscaping and green space and public space at the base and bottom of the building. B, it allows more light and air to circulate around the structure as you don't have this big, wide, blocky building. 3, it doesn't block as many views for those who live in neighboring buildings and high rises. And D, it creates a better profile and projection on your skyline. You don't get a plateau effect, but rather you're going to have peaks and valleys. It makes the topography of your skyline much more interesting. The sister building was recently completed, coming up here to our left as we complete the turn, 360 West Hubbard. It is called Hubbard Place. Same architectural firm, that building is 40 feet taller. Both high rises are rental buildings. Now here, I can give you a great example of how we used to treat the river's edge to our left versus how we now treat the river's edge to our right. Here to our left, the East Bank Club from about 1980. A high-end health club turns its backside to the river. No windows along the base, no real river walk, landscaping, lighting, flowers, plants, gardens. Well, there are some flowers now in those flower pots. It's something that's better than nothing. Then you fast forward 2 decades to your right, you have an entirely new neighborhood called Kinsey Park. Notice they're set back 30 feet from the river, so you can include these public promenades with river walking and landscaping. The city of Chicago, developers and the residents are no longer viewing the river as that nasty stream we use. We're trying to embrace it and view it as the city's second waterfront. Now the townhomes here are nice. One of the personal drawbacks I see to them, copy, cut, paste, 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 copy, cut, paste. They all look alike, which is a bit boring after a while. Had it been me, they would have still been conjoined, but I would have used some different color brick and stone to divide up the units, maybe rotate some of the brick to have it correspond. Some of the doors or windows would have been arched, maybe a bay window here, a bay window there, some varying roof heights, just to break up the floor and monotony a little bit. But it is a great improvement over what was there before, which was pretty much nothing. They didn't turn their backs to the river, they embraced the river. And one reason for doing that, the quality of the water in the river has greatly improved, from being highly toxic to just polluted. So we are working on it slowly but surely. This railroad bridge on the diagonal, I've never in my short lifespan seen down. Now the reason they keep it up is because when it is down, the clearance is only like 6 feet. Boats would not be able to pass through below it. They'd have to have it manned 24/7. It was built back in 1908 by the Chicago and Northwestern Railway Company. The tracks that go across it originally went all the way out to Navy Pier, and the pier was used for industrial purposes. They won't be tearing it down because it has been landmarked. The narrow crescent-like building here to our right, this River Bend by DeStefano and Partners, 2003. Townhomes along the base. Above that, a few floors of parking. Above that, tower units. All residential units face east. You saw how slender that building was, not because of the tall, thin factor I mentioned 3 minutes ago, but because there's some train tracks that go behind the building. Street, train tracks, and river, causing this parcel of land to be very skinny. So skinny, there was not enough room to construct ramps to access the parking garage. You've all been in garages and you know you need a wide turning radius. So instead, they designed elevators in that space to lift the cars onto the floors where they're parked. Had you been on the boat this time last year, you'd have no problem seeing the train tracks here to our right, but they're working on phase 1 of a 2-phase project, which includes the construction of this roughly 50-story tall office building here to our right called River Point, designed by Picard Chilton Architects out of New Haven, Connecticut. It's going to rise to a height of 730 feet once everything is said and done. Phase 1, decking over the train tracks, which they've done. The porthole-like openings, as you can see, are fans to vent the diesel exhaust from inside that tunnel. On top of the tunnel, you're going to have a landscape 1.5-acre park and plaza, which is going to be open to everyone. They constructed the elevator there at the corner, the ADA accessibility. The tower itself will rise in the background 730 feet and be done in 2017. Now, I'll admit it, I will. I'm a little bit selfish. I was hoping for something in the range of like 900 feet tall here, just because I like tall buildings. It's at the end of the main branch of the river. I thought it would be more stunning. And as you can see, I myself am really challenged. so I know how it feels. But it ain't my $400 million being used, so I'm going to be off for an opinion. But it is going to be a nice addition to the river corridor once everything is said and done. Here to our right, we have almost twins, the former Butler Brothers warehouse buildings. The one there in the background is 1912 by D.H. Burnham and Company. The one to our right, 1922 by Graham Anderson, Probst and White. The one here to our right, as you can see, has been renovated. They hung balconies off the face, and people now live in that space. And yes, eventually, they're going to start to lose their views as well, because beginning this summer, they're going to begin construction on this roughly 53-story tall office building directly here to our right. 150 North Riverside Plaza, designed by Getch Architects. The building is going to rise to a height of about 745 feet once everything is said and done. Along with this high rise, they're going to have, again, a roughly 1.5-acre public landscape open space. But for the two high rises combined, you're going to have 3 acres of landscape open space. That's not too bad for downtown Chicago at all. And as you can see, there's a lot of construction happening in this city, especially downtown at this time. Here to our right, we just have the headquarters to Boeing, the Plane and Aerospace